Welcome to everyone joining us here today, lovers of dance, history, and New York City. I'm Barbaralee Diamonstein-Spielvogel, the chair of the Historic Landmarks Preservation Center, a group of dedicated individuals committed to informing the public about the past, present, and future of historic preservation in our city. We're here today to celebrate the life and work of Merce Cunningham. But before we begin our program, I'd like to note that yesterday, the dance world lost another remarkable legend, Arthur Mitchell, the first black ballet dancer to achieve international stature. His aesthetic excellence as both a dancer and a choreographer broke new ground and helped to diversify the once all-white, or certainly nearly all-white, world of ballet, and he is certainly worthy, too, of commemoration. And now to our program. We are here today to celebrate the life and work of Merce Cunningham, about whom Jasper Johns once said, "Nothing Merce does is simple. Everything has a fascinating richness and multiplicity of direction." For almost 40 years, Merce Cunningham created the fascinating complexity that was his work here at the Merce Cunningham studio on the 11th floor of West Bethune. Our warmest thanks to all of our collaborators in this endeavor, the Merce Cunningham Trust, especially Ken Tabachnik, Executive Director, and to West Beth Artist Housing Chair Patricia Jones, the board, and the many residents, and of course the illustrious speakers, and to each and all of you for joining us here today. A reminder that this event is being videotaped and will be available to the public via a YouTube channel as part of the Diamonstein-Spielvogel video archive at the David Rubenstein Library at Duke University. Mercier Philip Merce Cunningham was born in Centralia, Washington, and began his professional dance career as a soloist in the Martha Graham Company. He presented his first solo concert in New York in April 1944 with composer John Cage, who became his life partner and collaborator until Cage's death in 1992. But Cunningham formed his own company in 1953 to explore his groundbreaking ideas about modern dance through his collaboration with innovators from every conceivable artistic discipline. He created a lasting body of meaningful work, choreographing more than 150 dances and 800 events. In tandem with Cage and other collaborators, Cunningham abandoned traditional reliance on story and narrative in dance, avoiding as well other conventional compositional elements such as cause and effect. His avid exploration of intersections between dance and other media, including new technologies, his exploration of movement is non-representational, and his incorporation of chance in the process of creation are just a few of the ways that Cunningham's process of creating dances opened the doors to diverse, multiple, and distinct modern works. Considered one of the most important choreographers of our time, his impact on the field cannot be overstated, both through his own work and through the dancers who trained with him and have gone on to form their own companies. Among his many awards are the National Medal of the Arts, the MacArthur Fellowship, Japan's Premium Imperial, and the British Laurence Olivier Award, and named an Officer of the Légion d'Honneur in 2004. Cunningham continued to lead his company until his death. He presented a new work, Nearly 90, at the Brooklyn Academy of Music in April 2009, just a few months before his death. An innovator in all areas, he even created a legacy plan, the first of its kind in the dance world, to provide a roadmap to help continue and preserve his work after his death. Ken Tabachnik is the able executive director of the Merce Cunningham Trust. He has worked with such luminaries as Trisha Brown, Robert Wilson, New York City Opera, Live from Lincoln Center, and the Bolshoi and Kirov companies. He received his law degree from Fordham nearly 25 years ago, and is an expert in intellectual property. From 2004 to 2010, he was general manager of the New York City Ballet. He then served as Dean of the School of the Arts at Purchase College, Bethune, and Deputy Dean at the Tisch School at NYU of the Arts. Among his other responsibilities, beware, Ken is not only Vice Chair of Artist Housing, but he holds a 3rd degree in black belt in Taekwondo and teaches regularly. Welcome, Ken Tabachnik.
Thank you very much, Barbaralee. Boy, it sounds like quite a lot. Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for joining us. It's a real joy to be here today at the beginning of the celebration of the Merce Cunningham Centennial, which surrounds the 100th birthday, the iconoclastic artist who spent much of his creative life in this unique artist complex. As you will hear from the other speakers today, all of whom have more direct experience of Merce Cunningham and his time at Westbeth than I do, this building was and continues to be the seat of artistic experimentation, development, and creativity. So we are very grateful to be able to mark Cunningham's place in this history with the plaque we unveiled today. It would not have been possible to install this marker without the dogged interest and support of Barbaralee Diamonstein-Spielvogel and the Historic Landmarks Preservation Center. This wonderful group has dedicated itself to ensuring that future generations remember the creative and cultural legacy of places and people in our great city. Of course, we have to express our thanks to Westbeth and the community of artists who live here, those who built it, and we are honored to have Joan Davidson, who was instrumental in founding Westbeth, with us today, and those who, like Merce Cunningham, took a leap of faith and moved here 40 years ago and set an example of what a vibrant, artistic, live-work community can look like. I would like to especially acknowledge the Executive Director, Pat Jones, and the Westbeth trustees who have partnered with the Merce Cunningham Trust and the HPLC to make this plaque and today's ceremony possible. Finally, I would like to acknowledge all of the Cunningham dancers, teachers, administrators, and trustees who gave of their time, their talent, their inspiration, and themselves in so many ways over the decades, all in the service of furthering the vision and unique voice of Merce Cunningham, whose legacy we now serve. Thank you.
Thank you, Ken. Gus Solomons, Jr., an accomplished dancer, choreographer, dance critic, and actor, graduated from MIT with a Bachelor of Architecture degree. But he moved to New York City with, quote, a burning itch to perform and make dances. He performed with Pearl Lang, Donald McHale, Joyce Trissler, Paul Sansardo, Martha Graham, and danced with Merce Cunningham and Company from 1965 to 1968. His dance reviews have appeared in the Village Voice, Ballet News, Attitude, and Dance Magazine. 1972, he founded the Gus Solomon's Dance Company. His detailed and analytical compositions draw from architectural experience. Solomon's has compared movement design to building design, with the important exception that dance is not fixed in time. Welcome, Gus Solomon's.
Good morning, thank you. I'm very honored to be here. I want to thank Cunningham Trust and Diamonstein-Spielvogel for inviting me to be part of this centennial celebration of Merce Cunningham, who has been without doubt one of the most influential artists of the last and current centuries and a seminal influence on my life as a dancer. When I first saw his company dancing Crises at the Boston Arts Festival in 1960 in a German-designed suspended canopy on the banks of the Charles River, my architectural studies and my dance fantasies collided. Inside that spacious avant-garde theater tent, I fell in love with the enormous space within and around the movements that Merce Cunningham had created for himself and his dancers, Carolyn Brown, Viola Farber, Judith Dunn, and Marilyn Wood. While Conlon Nancarrow's studies for player piano tinkled and crashed and plunked at unexpected intervals during the dancing. The following year, when I came to New York as a dancer for Donald McHale, which happened to be the first job I got out of college, I knew I had to study dancing with Merce Cunningham. Actually, I never even aspired to be in Merce's company because no one in it looked like me. At 6'3", which I was then, I was taller than Merce, and I was black. Mind you, there was no danger of my upstaging that primal physicality of his amazing dancing, nevertheless. But I was completely infatuated with Merce's technical abilities and his radical ideas about the limitlessness of movement itself as the material for dance, making the movement his primary artistic material, independent of any ulterior meaning, which until then had pretty much been the foundation of modern dance. For Merce, the movement was the meaning, and for us dancers, the kinetic challenge of doing it clearly enough as to leave no doubt for the audience about its precise shapes, its speeds, and its intricate rhythms was completely exhilarating and exciting and exhausting. Merce's best advice to me was, you've got to be strong. His worst advice to me was, ankle weights will help strengthen your back. Somatic training wasn't so advanced back in 1965. What his training did do for me, however, was make me the strongest dancer I could be, because he understood that the way to get strong was by moving impossibly slowly, impossibly fast, and with complete clarity about your physical intention. When his studio moved from 14th Street and 6th Avenue to 33rd and 3rd, I took every class every day. Merce's phrases in class were fiercely intricate, and you could tell Merce's mood by how glacially, muscle-crampingly slow the adagio phrase that day would be. But it made us strong. In the advanced class, my pal Val Setterfield and I would stand at the side watching the other groups do the class material and surreptitiously remark to each other who was and who was not doing it the way Merce had taught it. In rehearsals, Merce didn't give a lot of verbal feedback. He trusted his dancers to discover what interested him about what he'd given us to do. If it didn't please him, he'd modify the physics of it until our version of it pleased him. I felt I knew without words when it was what he was after. He just needed more and more practice to make it consistent. Merce's tacit affirmation gave me confidence both as a dancer and as a maker of my own dances. Perhaps uniquely among 20th century choreography, Merce Cunningham's dances require simply clarity of execution and physical commitment to convey their full meanings, which is why they remain endlessly vital and complex and fresh. They are the quintessence of what dance is. And whatever Merce's wishes may have been about their longevity, they will live forever in the hearts and bodies of those who were and are lucky enough to see them, and those of us who were even luckier enough to do them. Thank you, Merce.
And thank you, Gus. Richard Castellanos. Is he here?
I'm next.
Yes.
She's next. She's on your list next. Want me next?
Richard Castellanos. Artist, poet, and critic, has produced works in audio, video, holography, prints, book art, and computer-based installations. A prolific writer on the avant-garde, he's the editor of more than 30 anthologies, including John Cage and Merce Cunningham, Dancing in Space and Time. A graduate of Brown, Columbia, and King's College, Castellanos is the recipient of numerous grants, honors, and awards, including a Pulitzer Fellowship in Critical Writing, a Guggenheim Fellowship, and numerous National Endowment for the Arts grants.
Okay. For me, Merce, can you hear me? You can't hear me say so. Merce should be respected for overcoming disadvantage, much as his life partner John Cage did before him. When John Cage was told early in his compositional career he had no talent for harmony, Cage figured out how to compose music devoid of harmony. Merce began modern dance with two disadvantages. He was too tall. He was over 6 feet tall. The classic anecdote in my mind is Valda Setterfield, is she here, comes from England, and you tell the story many times. You come from England, and she goes to some Merce Cunningham studio where she's told to go, and she walks in, there's this big guy. She says, who's the big guy? All the dancers she knew in England were the size of jockeys. Merce's second disadvantage was that he was tight-jointed. His body was innately inflexible, which meant he could not extend and contort. When I told Mercer in 1972 that I was doing a profile of the New York Jets orthopedist, from whom I learned about tight joints versus loose joints, he confided to me that he was tight jointed. At that time, you might remember, Joe Namath was very loose jointed and forever wrecking his knees. He was a fullback who was so tight jointed he couldn't even pivot. He would sort of run into the line and bounce off people. I know because I'm tight jointed, and I've never wrecked my knees, never separated a shoulder, never done any of those injuries because I get cramps and pull muscles. Okay, so my understanding of Merce is that his physical advantage is determining of his own dance, as John Cage's disinclination to harmony was a determining of John's composition. It should be remembered for two guys who overcame serious disadvantage, which we agree they did inventively and magnificently. If I had more time, I would talk about Merce's great book. It's called Changes, a sort of autobiography. It came out in 1969, it's been out of print ever since. Try to find a copy if you can, because it's very good. Thank you very much, and thank you for being here.
Is a writer, performer, scholar, and arts administrator who worked with John Cage from 1986 to 1992. In 1993, she, together with Merce Cunningham and Arnoncourt, became founding trustees of the John Cage Trust. She remains both the founding trustee and executive director of the trust. She lectures widely on Cage's life and work and conducts numerous performance workshops. In 2007, the John Cage Trust went into what is referred to as residential placement at Bard College, where Kuhn now serves as the first John Cage Professor of Arts. She is also the editor of the Selected Letters of John Cage. Warm welcome to you.
haven't prepared anything to say because in a way I'm a kind of interloper here, because really my access to Merce Cunningham, my knowledge of Merce Cunningham, and what turned out to be a very long relationship with Merce Cunningham really came through John Cage. Merce spent, I would say, the first year or two of my relationship with John Cage avoiding me. He avoided anybody that Cage brought home. So Cage would have many people in the house working. We weren't allowed to come to the loft until after 10 o'clock, making sure that Merce was able to get out and get to the studio. And we got kicked out well before 6 p.m. because that's the earliest that Merce might get home. He hated the social mess of John Cage's life, although I have to tell you, fast forward to 1992, when John Cage died, Merce's home, and Merce by extension, became a kind of a social hub for New York City. It became a place where so many faces in this crowd came to dinner on a kind of monthly basis. It just felt comfortable. Marguerite, Nancy, just hanging out at Merce's loft. The first time I ever had really a little audience with Merce, if you will, was again at Cage's instigation. He kept trying to get Merce to welcome me, to pay attention to me. Merce wasn't having it until one day, John told Merce how much I was interested in computers. This was in the mid-1980s. And Merce was then himself just getting into the use of a computer software program to choreograph, using a software program out of Simon Fraser University in Canada called Lifeforms, now called Dance Forms. It's long been called Dance Forms. So Merce, uncharacteristically made the time for me to go to this very building and spend an hour with him. And where he worked on a computer, a very large computer, a mainframe computer, essentially called the Unix system, and spent an hour with me showing me what he was doing with choreography in the computer. Merce was so proud John was so proud of Merce over this, because John himself had been using a computer for a couple of years, but couldn't do anything himself. He had Andy Culver, who's not here today, I don't think, but Andy did all of his programming and all of his bidding with the computer, and John was so envious in a way and so proud of Merce's ability to work with a computer. But that was really the beginning of Merce's systematic use of chance operations and applied to the body in choreography, which served him for, we're talking now, what is that, another 25 years to the time of his death. I'm not going to say a whole lot more, but this building, I honestly haven't been back to Westbeth since Merce died in 2009, so 9 years later. He was an amazingly warm and loving person, curious about the world. He was intensely interested in almost any topic that you were interested in. If you had passion for it, he wanted to listen to you talk. It's just a pleasure to see you all here. Thank you so much. So much. That was Cage.
Thank you. Alistair Macaulay is the chief dance critic of the New York Times since 2007. Previously, he was the chief theater critic of the Financial Times of London, which of course also incorporates the United States, and the chief dance critic for the Times Literary Supplement before that. He was the founding editor of the British Quarterly Dance Theatre Journal and a guest dance critic for the New Yorker. In 1998, his biography of Margot Fonteyn was published, and he has contributed to books on the choreographers Frederick Ashton and Mark Morris. He is currently at work on a biography of Merce, and if I have it correct, entitled The Ambiguities of Merce Cunningham. Welcome, Alistair Macaulay.
Thanks so much, Barbara. Thanks, Ken. there are so many people here who are part of Merce's world. Great to be here. Extraordinary to hear that I wasn't expecting that much biography of me. I really thought I'd sent in one sentence. But it reminds me when I came here to work for the New Yorker in 1988, my editor was Bob Gottlieb. Afternoon, I'm rushing off to have lunch with him. And Bob summoned me to his office and said, "Okay, what's your first piece going to be about?" And Merce was just then beginning a month-long season, 4 weeks at the Joyce Theatre. And I said, "It's going to be about Merce." And Bob said, "Fine, what else?" So I said, "It's just going to be about Merce Cunningham." And Bob said, "Oh, well, I guess we've all known what everybody else says about Merce, so maybe it'll be interesting to hear what you have to say." I was up against that challenge from the beginning, which was a great challenge because, of course, it became a project for the rest of my career, trying to explain why there is an endless amount to say about Merce Cunningham. A lot of it is to do with Westbeth, really. We all know that the dance world is often said to have New York as its capital, and we all know that that was often meaningless. The dance world needs as many capitals as it can get. It needs Wuppertal, it needs Miami, it needs St. Petersburg, it needs London. But there is one way in which New York is singular, and has always been singular, and that is that for some 80 years, choreographers taught their companies how to dance in New York. I particularly would single out four. Martha Graham, this company, of course, now is here in Westbeth, George Balanchine, Anthony Tudor, and Merce Cunningham. Three of them died in the 80s and early 90s. Cunningham was the one who lasted longest until 2009. To have choreographers who shape dancers in a technique where the classroom becomes a laboratory, that made New York like no other city. And to have four of these figures of such eminence doing it at the same time, it wasn't just New York that profited. The whole dance world, the whole world of the arts was enlarged by these men and women. Woman, Martha, George, Anthony, and Merce. Merce did it in one studio after another until very early 70s, David Vaughan spotted that Westbeth was being made a home for the arts and drew Merce's attention to it. The company quickly booked a studio here. You know the rest. I was expecting the plug. I thought we were going to be up on the top floor where Merce's studio was. It's strange to be out in the street. But I'm glad it's up there because actually there were two floors of Westbeth which mattered in the Merce operation. One was the top floor where the Cunningham company had its studio and so much else. It performed there, rehearsed there, it took class there. But on the second floor there was the Merce Cunningham archive. And David Vaughan, whom I've mentioned, made that too a standard setter. When you go to Jacob's Pillow, when you go to the Rambert, when you go to the Paris Opera Ballet, all of them now base their archiving methods on the standards set here by David Vaughan at Westbeth. David did it because of Merce. He took one look at Merce's work in the 50s and knew that he had to catch every performance he could about the Cunningham Company from then on. Many of you here know that feeling. I began in London and Edinburgh watching Merce, came to work here and on and off, and then finally took this job for the Times in 2007. And I was lucky that I caught the last 2 years of Merce's life. In particular, my first piece for the New York Times about the New York performance was about a retrospective evening where the Cunningham people looked back with Merce present to dances that Merce made between 1944 and 1960, from Totem Ancestor to Crises. And it has a name, really, that connects to this park and connects to why you're all here. It was one of a series. Some of them were about Merce in the 70s, 50s, but this one was Merce's early work, and the name of that evening was History Matters. That's why we're here. History Matters. Here's to Merce Cunningham.
Thank you, Alistair Macaulay. Considered one of the greatest dancers of our time, Mikhail Baryshnikov was born in Riga, Latvia, on the same day where different location, Mozart was born. He began his career with the Kirov Ballet and joined American Ballet Theater in 1974, and in 1979 joined the New York City Ballet, where the following year he was appointed artistic director, a position he held until 1989. From 2002, Mr. Baryshnikov was director and dancer with the White Oak Dance Project, and he co-founded with choreographer Mark Mars to expand the repertoire and visibility of American modern dance. In 2005, he launched the Baryshnikov Arts Center, BAC, which annually serves more than 700 artists and 22,000 audience members. A talented actor as well, he's received a Tony Award nomination and a Drama Desk Award for Metamorphosis and an Academy Award nomination for The Turning Point. His many significant awards include the Kennedy Center Honors, the National Medal of Honor, the Vilcek Award, and Japan's Premium Imperial. A very warm welcome to Imperial.
Thank you very much for a lovely introduction. Thank you for coming, everybody. I've been informed that I have between 2 and 3 minutes. Yeah? I know what I can do in 2 or 3 minutes, but what I'm saying in 2 or 3 minutes, I don't know. And nevertheless, you know, I've spent in this extraordinary building many hours working with Merce Cunningham and his company, dance with them, learn from them a lot. But the most vivid memories about being here, those hours where I spent with Merce here alone, just two of us, when he invited me to join him in a dance occasion piece for his season in Lincoln Center. In New York at that time, I think it was 2 weeks of the most unbearable heat, and we rehearsed, of course, up in the studio. There is no air condition, with probably a temperature around 40 degrees or so, without any fresh air. And Merce was taking tea breaks and watering his plants. He was very concerned that his plants would suffer. And we were working, swimming in our own sweat and humidity around us. Sort of around, we worked probably for 4 or 5 hours in this intense situation. And he said, "Isn't it nice here?" I said, "Yes, Merce, it's a bit hot." He said, "It's so nice here when nobody here. It's even better." And then while we were we knew the dance already by the time, and probably in like few days we were close to premiere. And I said, "I think we've got it. Don't you think we've got it?" I said, "Well, I guess if you think we've got it." Nurse, I'm really worried because you look a bit tired. I have a car downstairs parked, I can give you a lift. And I said, no, I have to work a little bit more because my computer here, my plants here, and I want to tell you, I'd rather be here than anywhere else in the world. I'd rather be here. And alone, I said, yes, even better. Which means, you know, for me, this building would be always, when I pass by, you know, to remember Merce's figure, very determined, very relaxed, and very hopeful at the same time. His spirit will be always flying around those open windows, you know, and on this roof. She said, it's so nice to live and work west of New York, looking to the river. Thank you.
Thank you. From 1977 to 1993, Joan K. Davidson was president of the J.M. Kaplan Fund and a passionate advocate for the development of the West Beth Artist Housing Project. She, in fact, served as the first president of West Beth. She is now President Emeritus of the fund. But in 1995, she founded Furthermore, which provides grants for nonfiction books. She served as chair of the New York State Council on the Arts, commissioner of the New York State Office of Parks, Recreation, and Historic Preservation. She is a life member of the Municipal Art Society and the recipient of numerous honors and awards. It gives me great pleasure to introduce you to Joan K. Davidson.
It's almost over. You can sit down. This is a total Merce feast, of course. But Barbaralee asked me to tell you a little bit about this building, which of course is now Merce's home. So a few words about West Beth. Not about its complicated funding mechanisms and its need for repairs and other dreary topics, but instead a word or two about West Beth's mythic presence in the consciousness of New Yorkers and of people in the arts everywhere. In the beginning, 50 years, incredible, we started this thing. In the beginning, West Beth represented a radical idea, and in a sense still does. Sorry. The idea that working artists in all disciplines, painters and sculptors, yes, but also musicians, poets, photographers, playwrights, people in the theater, people in the dance world, should have a safe and comfortable place to live and work in, and that place should be smack in the heart of a great city. Such a thing had never happened before, and sadly has not happened since. West Beth is radical in that it was created by a strong, creative, harmonious public-private partnership that actually achieved its goals. And then opened up the west side, waterfront to residential use, where only decaying factories and warehouses had been before. It encouraged loft conversions throughout the city, strengthened Greenwich Village as a historic district, and for the first time turned an old decaying industrial building into a new kind of urban housing. We were the first to do that. Leading participants in and advocates for these exciting undertakings were Mayor John Lindsay, Greenwich Village partisans, supporters at all levels of government, and many of New York's civic leaders, including the great Jane Jacobs. It all began in the 60s in the Kennedy administration through the inspiration of Roger Stevens, who was the first head of the newly established National Endowment on the Arts. Looking out across America, fledgling NEA determined that the most important thing government could do for the arts in America would be to create a special place for working serious artists, and of course that place had to be in New York. To do the job, the NEA needed a private sector partner, and Mr. Stevens came up to the city from Washington to ask his old friend, my father, Jacob Kaplan, with his J.M. Kaplan Fund, to say yes. And my father said yes. Then the NEA handed over to the Kaplan Fund the responsibility for getting the place built. This miraculously happened in 2 short years. From 1967, when the site was a miscellaneous scattering of industrial structures for the old Bell Telephone Lab, until it was reborn as this solid building full of spanking fresh live-in studios, 383 live-in studios in late 1969 when the first residents moved in. Westbeth is radical also in its design. Superb architect Richard Meyer came up with ingenious ways to transform long, dull office corridors into light-filled duplex apartments here, each slightly different from the others with no wasted space. He drew dotted lines on the plan so that individual inhabitants could dispense with walls and fit out their own space to suit. He painted parts of the endless hallways in luscious primary colors, red, yellow, Kelly green. I'm afraid all painted over by now. With its thrilling outlook on the Hudson River, its charmingly designed round balconies, wide open courtyards, and elegant appointments throughout, Westbeth was born as a splendid new world of its own. And so, of course, it turned out to be just the right place for Merce. Merce himself is a splendid new world of his own. Inventive, ingenious, resourceful, dazzling, even beyond Westbeth's ambition. What a great day it was in 1971 when Merce and the company moved in. So hosannas to Barbaralee and her wonderful landmark group for giving us this grand plaque, so that the beautiful idea of Merce will from now on ennoble the life of Westbeth and of New York forever. Thank you.
Thank you, Joan, for that wonderful and detailed history of Westbeth that is not very widely known, and I hope will become part of your archive, and we have it, of course, on video. For those of you who are interested in the work of the Historic Landmarks Preservation Center, it is very diverse, and one of its programs are the cultural medallions. It's also all the street signs in the historic districts, the historic district markers, and the cultural medallions. And if you know of someone who lived and worked and created something remarkable to enhance our city, because we really do know that it's not so much the buildings, but what goes on inside them that creates the tempo and lift and vault of New York City. Please share it with the Historic Landmarks Preservation Center. So before we adjourn, I'm going to ask Pat Jones to please unveil this cultural medallion and Ken Tabashnik to come and read it.
Thank you. And the medallion reads, Merce Philip Cunningham, April 16, 1919 to July 26, 2009, 55 Bethune Street, Manhattan. Merce Cunningham, the acclaimed dancer and visionary choreographer, was among the first tenants of West End, moving in shortly after it opened as a living and working space for artists in 1970. From then until his death in 2009, Cunningham taught, choreographed, and directed the Merce Cunningham Dance Company from the 11th floor space, then known as the Merce Cunningham Studio. Of the 190 dances Cunningham choreographed during his 7-decade career, more than 80 were created at West Bend, including Sound Dance in 1975, Beach Birds in 1991, and Biped in 1999. Cunningham was known for his groundbreaking ideas about dance and choreography, his work in film and technology, and his collaborations with celebrated artists including John Cage, Robert Rauschenberg, Jasper Johns, and Andy Warhol. His legacy continues to influence choreographers and artists today.
And thanks to you, the audience, for joining us. For your own information, there are more than 117 cultural medallions that are now installed throughout the 5 boroughs. In fact, a booklet of 124 pages will be published October 1st, entitled Notable New Yorkers, that not only cites all the cultural medallions, but the genesis and evolution of the street sign, cultural medallion, cultural market programs in New York City. I hope you will find them of interest. Thank you all for joining us today. And on behalf of West Bend and the Merce Cunningham Company, you are all invited to a reception at the first ramp down the street here now. Thank you for coming.
Thank you. The reception is in the gallery. Speakers, please don't go because we'd love to get a group picture of everyone.
Okay. Happy? Good.
Okay.
I got it.
You
Thank
got
you.
it. Thank you very much. Bravo.